So Monroe Drive is the first one. And Monroe Drive is one of these ideas and concepts that did start in another policy document. So this is one of those ones that you as a neighborhood, you've inherited this concept. It didn't emerge and come out of this process. So Monroe Drive, the concept is what's called a road diet that is happening in cities all over the country where at a certain threshold of traffic numbers this works, where a thoroughfare that has 4 lanes, so 2 in each direction, the middle lanes end up basically becoming de facto turn lanes, because anyone who has to turn off the corridor does so from the inside lane. And when the inside lane becomes the de facto turn lane, then it's really the outside lane that becomes the 3 lanes. And so the concept of road diets is that a certain threshold number of vehicular trips per day, that road can accommodate a middle turn lane that is the real turn lane, and all the turning movements happen out of that middle lane. And then the outside, there's 1 lane each in each direction, so it goes from 4 lanes to 3. And the outside lanes continue to carry that through traffic, just like the outside lanes were doing before. So what that does is it also has a benefit of just leaving you with an extra lane that you can then do whatever you want to do with that. So this was a concept that, I'll just say that this was in the Beltline plan, where this was studied and adopted through the city. And so those outside lanes in the Beltline plan were recommended to be wider sidewalks on Monroe, because right now I think they're about 5 feet, and they could stand to be wider. So that was in the Beltline plan. That same concept ended up being adopted through the city's transportation plan. And so we came back around and to just look at a couple details. We wanted to make sure that pedestrian mobility was being accounted for crossing Monroe. So we've made recommendations through the plan to make sure that we have strong pedestrian signals and crosswalks at the intersections. We've even recommended having at the major intersections what we call an all-pedestrian phase, where all the traffic stops at the intersection and it's only for pedestrians and bikes to move across the intersection for that time. So we're recommending that. The other thing that came out through the process was this idea of taking Park and Monroe and doing a roundabout at that intersection, because it's wide enough that you can do that. And so that's another idea that came up through the process. You'll have to make sure, and we talk about this in the plan, but you have to back the crosswalks off a little bit from the roundabout and do a little bit further away from the center of the roundabout to still make sure you can do the pedestrian movements, but you can do that by having active pedestrian crossing, that you can activate the pedestrian signal. And you've seen, there's good examples of these better pedestrian crossing signals now, and I think the one I like the best is there's one on North Avenue across from the Georgia Tech Stadium, and pedestrians activate the light that stops the traffic, and then pedestrians can cross. So those are recommendations we've made for Monroe to continue to make sure pedestrians can cross Monroe.
Monroe at what intersection?
That would be for the whole Monroe from 10th Street to the edge of the neighborhood, so up to Park. And there's also, just so you know, Piedmont Heights, which is everything, Ansley Park Mall, that portion of Piedmont, they have the same exact concept in their master plan. So there's and it's in the city's transportation plan too, so the system would be larger than just your little portion of the neighborhood. So one key thing to note here is that I think, and this is what we say in the master plan, but I think the priority long term with the road diet is that you should have the wider sidewalks on Monroe. I think that ultimately the Beltline is going to keep connecting up through Piedmont Park, and that's going to carry bike traffic better, I think, than Monroe will do. But when the easiest way to do the road diet, what makes the road diet easy, I should say, is that it's just a restriping. So, every so many years, the city will resurface a street, it'll restripe a street, and it's very simple and cheap for the city to just change the striping of the street. And so a road diet is really can be just a restriping. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money in infrastructure. So this can happen relatively quickly. The funding to build the sidewalks wider on both sides of Monroe, that will take a little bit of time. That'll be an expensive project. So what we say in the master plan is that, yes, the priority should be on sidewalks for Monroe, wider sidewalks for Monroe. But until the funding is in place for that, and since the restriping can happen relatively quickly, and the Beltline bike trail also isn't up and running yet, all the way through Piedmont, to go ahead and use that extra width for bikes while you're waiting for the funding for the wider sidewalks and for the Beltline to get up and running. The other thing I want to mention about the road diet that wasn't mentioned in the Beltline plan for it and the Connect Atlanta plan for it is, to me, this is also about trying to stake a claim in your neighborhood that Monroe is still a part of your neighborhood and that you have single-family neighborhood on both sides of Monroe. In that way, it's pretty similar to Virginia Avenue, where Virginia Avenue is definitely a busier road in the neighborhood, but it's not such a road that the people who live on it find it intolerable. And I think Monroe is getting to that point, and that's what we've heard through the process. And I think that the goal would be to make sure that Monroe Drive continues to be a street that people can live on, and that you can have a neighborhood on both sides of Monroe Drive, and it's viable. And right now, I think there's the opportunity to, given that this concept works from a traffic standpoint, with the amount of cars that are on the road, I think there's a chance to stake that claim and help both sides of the neighborhood get stitched back together. And not that they're apart, but it's just a busy road. And I think there's a way to still have a busy road, but that has viable single family on both sides. I think the road diet does that.